Hey guys. Hey guys, can you take a seat? Cool. Thank you guys. Does everyone have a seat? I mean, are there enough seats for everyone? That's more what I'm getting at.
It's an empty one up here in the middle.
And
Guys,
there's a bike there. And if there aren't enough, there's like a couple of extra chairs we can slide around. Cool. There's always more drinks and stuff at the back. You can feel free to grab, but if you get up and go there, everyone will judge you for going to get more drinks.
lots of drinks, actually.
Yeah, makes it better. Bathrooms are through that door that is very discreetly hidden in a bookcase. It's genius.
That's not the escape room?
No, the escape room's in another venue.
Oh. I was like, an escape room. How does it work?
We're not allowed to leave here until you get up. Yeah, welcome guys. It's cool to have you all here. Our first meetup for the year. It's probably the quickest we filled up RSVPs for a meetup. It's like, yeah, I think within half an hour we're full. And then we added more. It's pretty cool. So, yeah. Yeah. So if you hadn't caught us, if you hadn't seen it on Twitter and stuff, we're live streaming tonight through a very classy camera, which is the webcam on my laptop. It's basically Google Hangout on air, so people can watch live and do stream live, which is pretty cool. So if you're watching the live stream on your phone, like Jeff is doing, please use it, because otherwise you'll get a lot of weird echoey stuff going on. Also, because I think there's like a delay of like 10 seconds, so it'll be sound even weird. But yeah, so. Oh, Jeff did was. Not Jeff. So yeah, without any further ado, obviously the fact that you're all here, I'm sure you all know, Matt Mullenweg. He doesn't really need much introduction in this community. I think you can go ahead. Yeah, so Matt is the CEO of Automattic, the parent company behind WordPress.com, and co-founder of WordPress itself, which you obviously all know and love and use. Yeah, so he said a bit of a Q&A and just chat to us about WordPress and life and everything. So.
I think if you dyed your hair and wore more plaid, you could pass this. You could fill it up at every month. I mean.
You could give it a shot. I don't know.
Thank you all for coming. I guess Tuesdays are pretty slow here in Cape Town. But yeah, it's been really enjoyable spending some time in the city and discovering where the fast internet is. Because it's not over the cell phone. It's not at the houses. The wind's been incredible. I've never seen anything like this. Like, it'll be normal. Hurricane! That's been pretty exciting too. And yeah, just exploring the city a little bit in a more casual way. And of course, spending time, if you're with Woo, as you all probably know, Woo Themes is actually right downstairs from here. Is their office. Cool spot, right? And so that's been meeting with all the colleagues there and planning out the coming year for Woo Commerce.
Cool. So a few people emailed questions beforehand. Some people were here and some people couldn't make it. So I'll start with a couple of those. And perhaps the most important one, the most pressing one. Or could I probably ask this in a moment. But someone asked, and we I guess the future of WordPress really hinges on it. But is your hair dyed blonde?
All natural, all natural. I got a plugin that changes color schemes. Yeah, we have color scheme support with WP admin. I just thought it'd be good to try out. Yeah, try something new every year.
Cool. Cool.
Starting with the hard-hitting ones.
Yeah, we've done that. Okay. So the questions I've got you, I'll do a couple here, then we'll open it up and see where it goes from there. And yeah, it'll be fun. You guys at the back will allow to sit down if you want. I feel nervous. Please stand. Cool. Chill. Sorry. So yeah, the questions we have sort of range from like code-related stuff to business stuff, everything in between. Just one question from Sam Susi. Will WordPress in the future move towards an MVC approach and eventually become a PHP framework?
Probably not. But when you think about it, if you look at the approach of Calypso, where you have a pure JavaScript admin talking purely via APIs to the PHP server, you get, I think, actually better than the separation of the normally structured, traditionally structured MVC PHP application approach would be. Because you actually have things decoupled to the point where you use an entire different language to provide the best experience for folks. And my hope is that, obviously Calypso is like a standalone app you can download, but plugin authors can start to take this approach right away. As many of you know, with WordPress 4.4, included a scaffolding for the REST API, which means any of your plugins can now register natively endpoints for whatever your plugin does. And you can start to migrate or rewrite the interface for your plugin, assuming it has sort of a WP admin interface, to talk to you purely via those APIs. And that will position you very, very well for whatever direction you take. Is the PHP or JavaScript for doing the primary interface with which people administer their WordPress. And so if you haven't, I said it on stage at WordCamp US in the State of the Word. The big takeaway was to learn JavaScript deeply. I didn't realize that would become a meme, but yeah, if you don't know JavaScript, definitely make that your New Year's resolution to start reading about and learning as soon as possible, because I really do believe that the future of web development is this sort of approach. JavaScript applications, single-page apps, talking via APIs to those well-known areas.
Cool. The next question actually is kind of fun from that. Is looking at the future of WordPress and the implementation of Calypso. Calypso, by the way, if you didn't want to already aware, is the new WordPress.com interface, and it's a native desktop app on Mac, and Windows and Linux now as well.
Yeah.
For in fact, WordPress.com and also your WordPress.org stats through Jetpack. But looking at the future of WordPress and implementation of Calypso with its focus on JavaScript, what would you recommend startup coders to focus on? Node.js and React or PHP? Or another language?
You don't need Node.js too much, actually. If you look at Calypso, the Node layer is actually super, super thin. But React would be excellent to learn. And PHP would also be excellent to learn. So I will say React and PHP. I would combine the two choices to create an unknown third choice, which I think is going to be the future of WordPress and plugins. If you haven't checked out the Calypso codebase, please do so. It is, the first version is built for WordPress.com, but it's just, again, it's basically WP admin rewritten in JavaScript talking to APIs. And today's APIs on WordPress.com, but those APIs could be talking to your plugin. It could be talking to other services hosted elsewhere. And hopefully someday it could be talking directly to your WordPress instance, wherever that may be. So this type of approach, it is, it's definitely a learning curve from what many of us know today. Wow, how louder. It's definitely a learning curve for especially some of us, like myself, who have been writing PHP for more than a decade now. But it's totally worth it. It's one of these step functions where the benefit on the other side of this very painful learning curve provides so much that it's not an incremental thing, it's exponential improvement. And if you can check out the Calypso code base and see how the React modules work, how networking works, how everything works in there. And thinking about how you could perhaps apply that. Well, even if you're writing PHP, perhaps apply a similar approach. Wow. It's like a ghost. What was it? Sorry, for those on the live stream, a giant trash bag just flew flying through our third-story window.
It's capable. That's like all the time.
Giraffe, that would be awesome.
Because they walk the streets in real time. Yeah, let's develop a technical question. As the CEO of Automattic, what does your usual day look like, and what kinds of things do you do to stay on top of everything, as well as to disconnect? Is that broad?
There's almost no usual days. This past week I've been here in Cape Town. Before that I was in Houston. Going back, I'll be in San Francisco, New York. So I'm on the road quite a bit, which means that depending on where I am, the sort of daily routine can be pretty different. There are a few things I do try to do every day as much as possible. Including the disconnect, I find is often best in the morning. I can't do it every morning because sometimes I sleep a little bit. But mornings when I do wake up, as I plan to, I love to read in the morning. And that sort of sets your, like a book, if possible, usually on a Kindle. And that sets your mind sort of the right speed for tackling deeper things throughout the day. And that's sort of going straight into that monkey mind, bouncing from interruption to interruption to interruption. And I try to do some little exercises every day. Just some little tiny habits. There's a cool app called Coach.me. Do you want to try this? It doesn't really do, I mean, it has some features where you can get trainers or something, but I just use it like a daily to-do app because every day you start fresh. So if you miss the day, it's okay. You start the next day with a completely new list. It's not bugging you. It's not saying, oh, you broke your streak. It just sort of gives you the list again, very non-judgmental. And that's important. A lot of software is very judgmental. You know when WordPress is like, hey, there's an update available. It's like 2 weeks old now. It's judging you, but Coach.me doesn't really judge you. And you just kind of swipe right for the things you do. And yeah, there's some things like that. There's a medicine I take called Elysium, which is like a vitamin type thing. So I do like planks, some push-ups, some squats, some burpees. Those are fun. Burpees. Read, meditate, and blog are kind of my 3 non-physical things that I try to do every day. And I would recommend them for anyone new. If you can do those 3 things, you're in a good place. You can be like me. Dye your hair blonde, you're halfway there.
And this, I guess, depends, how much time that you spend in Cape Town in South Africa in general. But from what you can see, in your opinion, how healthy would you say the open source community is in Cape Town, South Africa, and in what ways do you think that we, as a Cape Town open source community, can increase our influence and effectiveness?
Well, based on the turnout tonight, I'd say pretty good. Okay, how does the WordPress meetup normally look like?
We don't do them super regularly, but it's pretty hard.
How does it start this year? New Year's resolution?
Yeah, of course.
We all start to come every month, even if I'm not here.
Anyone?
There hasn't been a WordCamp here in a while, right?
No, we have one every year.
Every year? Oh, okay. I came to one a couple of years ago.
You sent us a welcome video last year.
Hello, welcome to Cape Town. Thank you so much. I remember because I tried to say something.
Yes.
In Afrikaans. Right? That was tough.
You did it right. Yeah, our WordCamp's about 300 or so people, so we get pretty strong WordCamp. It's good.
Okay, I'd say the meetups though provide a ton of value because every single month people can come in and it's a little more casual because a lot of the great thing about the WordPress community is certainly just meeting all the people and helping each other or pointing someone to a resource or a JavaScript article or a book you read or something that can really help shortcut them to learning. That's really one of the things I love about the WordPress community. It's about learning. At no point in our history, even though we've been very successful, especially the past few years, have we ever lost that humility and desire to keep expanding our skills. So much so that, Flipso is not even in PHP. So, I mean, willing to take those big steps and being a lifelong student, I think is really, really important. So the original question, which is the state of open source in Cape Town and South Africa, I'm say I'm not an expert. I can tell you a couple of good restaurants to go to. can tell you to use WooCommerce, but beyond that, many of you here in this room are probably far more versed in that subject than I. Cool.
I think I've got a few more here, but let's open it up to questions from you guys. Anyone? Yeah.
Do we have a mic going around?
Yes, we do have a mic.
The cell phone this is for the live stream. It's for the internet.
Yeah.
So, my question is sort of twofold. You can choose how you want to answer it. My one would be something people ask a lot that I can't answer. Are there inherently any limitations to using WordPress to build this sort of complicated system? And the second sort of part to that would be, if you could start again, is there something that you've done that's a bit difficult to now upgrade away from that you would do differently?
Yeah, I'd write it in JavaScript. But we kind of did that. So, I mean, that was kind of how a lot of that decision came to. Is if we were starting WordPress from scratch today, what approach would we take? And actually, a JavaScript interface with a PHP server side is, I think, the most ubiquitous approach you can take. Because obviously, JavaScript is the most interesting interface language in the world right now. And PHP is the most ubiquitous server side language. And plenty fast for anything you need to do. So those combined, obviously Node is awesome and cool, but the hosting environment-wise, it's much less ubiquitous than PHP is. And of course, WordPress supports every version of PHP, almost. That just allows us the distribution and the ability to reach a lot of folks. And the first question was?
Inherent limitations. I'm thinking about the sort of structure of the database thing.
Oh, there's a ton I would change the database tables. Like, for example, there's that capital ID. It drives me crazy. That goes way back to P2 days. I mean, way. And so there's some sort of naming inconsistencies that I would change. But I think one thing we have always talked about with WordPress is how to do the most with the sort of minimum number of tables, and how we've extended sort of some basic data structures to be used to run many things. And that allows, that seems, some of these other open source messaging around they'll set up like 30, 40, 50 tables for one site. And WordPress actually might go down a table. We actually have gone down tables in the past couple of years as things like other mistakes, like there used to be a WP links table and WP link options, and we made that, all that sort of stuff. We built a table for a feature, not realizing that the data structures were pretty much the same as the data structures and everything else we did. So we just had to, we need to abstract that a little bit. And then once you do that, you get a lot of things for free. You get caching, you get sort of the table caches, you get all the APIs that you build for accessing one type of thing, like posts and pages, can then now apply for other things. So I like that a lot. And in fact, I would encourage you, if you're writing plugins, to look very much at the most common access case for whatever the data structure is that you're using. And for mirrors, what posts and pages look like. So the native WordPress content types, or comments, or options, etc. Put it in the core table. Don't make a new table. There might be some exceptions. So, for example, like receipts in WooCommerce. That's kind of like that's something that you need to. It's almost more like a log, right? Where you want to store it, you might access it a little bit, but really it's more like an archive. That's a little bit different than most of the other content types. So might warrant its own tables. Even in WooCommerce, I think we have a few extra that we don't need. No problem. Thanks for your question.
Cool. Anyone else? Jeff?
Okay, so mine is also sort of a two-part question. My first part of the...
I like that thing.
You were just talking now about trying out to add additional tables to WordPress, but how often does WordPress incorporate popular features into the native build? Because I would argue that the ability to add custom post types is probably really common now, because it's it's gone so much further than just being a blog platform. I mean, with e-commerce and products, and with most projects that developers build custom post types now. So the second part then is, would WordPress consider building custom post type into the platform?
I knew this was going to come up because I had friends who were like, hey, I hope you love CPT. I was like, yeah, custom post types are awesome. This is also your airport code. I didn't realize that. There's certain things. So one of the things we try to do within core WordPress, so to your first question, we incorporate features all the time. In fact, it's hard to find anything in WordPress that perhaps didn't exist as a plugin first. And in fact, now explicitly with much of our new developments, with feature plugins, we try to actually test and develop new features we want in core purely as plugins, so they can be tested and sort of distributed and updated individually and independently from the WordPress core code base. And we can see how it works, how popular it's getting. Going all the way back to the big redesign, which was MP6, which came in version 3.8. That was the approach, and we found it worked really, really well. We were able to get tens of thousands of beta testers for this thing where normally WordPress beta releases see much, much less than that. So all the time, on custom post types in particular, one of the big struggles, and it is, I will say that it's as much art as science, is deciding what's sort of the 20% of the functionality that can be in core that addresses 80% of people, but still leaving a ton for plugins, right? Because the beauty of WordPress is the plugins. Like who runs a WordPress.org without any plugins, including Hello Dolly? Right? No. You at least have Hello Dolly. And in fact, I forget the exact median or mean, but people generally have somewhere between like 5 to 15 plugins on the site. And some crazy people have way more. Who has like 40 or 50 plugins on their site? Oh, like how many?
Well, I mean, people who call us site.
I guess thank you. Are you streaming again? Yeah, so some people have dozens and dozens. And I think that's okay. So, I don't know, do you have a favorite custom post type plugin that you use right now?
No, I just pull them in. I just code them in, but I would argue for sort of younger developers, you know, who are not really comfortable working in PHP maybe.
They might not be developers.
Or automated. But yeah, like, I don't know, perhaps it's part of the install, specifically because WordPress has become so widely used for a whole array of types of websites and, you know, everything from membership sites to whatever you can think.
So on that particular thing, why we haven't sort of created a custom, or let's call it the interface for creating custom post types, is if you look at what people do with custom post types, it's so intrinsically tied to the display as well that you're not really going to get away without writing in PHP, right? Because if probably your theme is taking advantage of the custom post types, or the plugin is taking advantage of the custom post types. So one sort of approach we've always said is that, like, keep things, again, as simple as possible. So what's the simplest possible approach? We're going to do the display with PHP. It's registered in PHP as well. Just a very simple function, which you've probably written 100 times to do so. And then that creates a placeholder interface. But really my hope is that people create a custom interface on top of it and don't use our placeholder stuff at all. Because by definition, a generic interface will be generic. And so as you get into really the richness which custom post types can enable, you know, we were looking at the products in WooCommerce today. And one of the things that, you know, the WooCommerce product editing is in something that looks a lot like a WordPress post editor. And that's probably not the right interface for that, to be honest. In fact, in our own walkthrough, it's a little bit confusing finding like the featured image, you know, to add a product image versus accidentally putting the product image in the description. Has anyone ever seen a client do that? Yeah, we did it today. We were pretending to be a client, but like, these sorts of things I think a more bespoke interface can really serve whatever it is that you're trying to they're a problem we're trying to solve. Like that's really cool integration with the theme in terms of displaying things that fit in well, or an entirely new plugin that extends things quite a bit. We do try to support a few in Jetpack as well. So if you check out how we support portfolios and few other things, there are some support in Jetpack that we try to make a little more universal, but that's probably still plugin territory. Thank you so much for your question.
Thanks.
Cool.
Ashley, back there.
Hi, I'm Ashley Shaw. I just wanted to get an idea. I listened to a podcast a little while ago about Calypso, and Nick, they said it took a year or a year and a half to put it together. Is that correct?
Yeah, about 140 people over 20 months.
Okay, so how did you choose React that long ago? It's not that long ago, but it's in the tech world, it's quite, I mean, like React is in my radars and you popped up in the last year. So I'm interested to know how you guys got this then. I have another question, but I'll ask that afterwards.
Is it a two-parter?
It's also to do with React. And it's to do with, I'll ask it.
I guess basically, I mean, your city has 2 words in it. Like 2-part things. The React, you're right, it was less mature when we started. The decision was not day one. So that 20 months, some of it was figuring things out. And in fact, it started with just a very small team at Automattic. And then it eventually grew like a, thing. What's that Katamari Darcy thing? Where the video game where the ball rolls around and picks up stuff. No one knows the Katamari Darcy game? No one? Really? Oh, man.
It hasn't reached South Africa.
No, it's an old game. It's like 10 years old. Okay, so maybe next year we can talk about this. I would highly recommend checking it out because it's a very unique game mechanic. So I think the study of game mechanics can actually be super informative for learning how to build interfaces. And the game mechanic is you start off as this small ball, and you start rolling around, and anything, you're like a sort of alien ball thing, and anything it touches, it picks up. So if it rolled through this room, it would pick all of y'all up. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you sort of play by moving it around, almost violent style, around the world and picking things up. And it's just a really unique game mechanic. So that's kind of cool. So it started out very small and then began picking up more and more and more people and teams and features and everything to encompass the vast majority of folks in the company who work on anything WordPress.com or Jetpack related. And it became, the great thing about React is that it provides the right amount of structure, but without being too prescriptive, like some of the other things we explored, like Angular. So it allows us the flexibility to really build our own system, but still provides just the right amount of a framework that gives us the benefit of using a framework in the first place. And now as we explore things, if you check out some of the work going on in Redux around Calypso, oh, something cool about Calypso I forgot to tell you is that it's all open source now. So we open source the whole kit and caboodle. It's on GitHub, and you can actually go to it and see the live code that is running WordPress.com. You can see the A/B tests we're running. You can see the features we're planning. You can see pretty much everything there. And so it's kind of radically transparent. And you can see the explorations that we're doing with Redux and some of the conversations and debate going on. So if that's something you're into, check that out. And in fact, we started to get PRs from outside Automattic, which is pretty interesting and cool too.
And then the last question, it's regarding, I was out having beers with a friend last night. He's been doing a lot of work with React, and he's building a plugin right now, and it's using React, but it's not using Node.js. And we were debating how awesome it is to build interfaces, like application interfaces, and the potential for maybe WordPress add-in. I realize that backwards compatibility is of utmost importance with WordPress, and it's not really going to be a thing that happens anytime soon. But would the WordPress add-in move in this sort of a direction in the future?
I think it's entirely a possibility, and something that was a very hot topic and had a lot of discussion. at WordCamp US this year. So, backwards compatibility is incredibly important, but it might be something where like once a decade it's worth bringing. If what's on the other side is really worth it. I think where most applications fail is that they bring this huge thing, which is the user trust around backwards compatibility, usually a small benefit. Something like ID being uppercase or lowercase. All right, it felt to me. But does the world change if we fix that? No. Do lots of things break if we fix that? Turns out we did. We tried it. And that was one of our early lessons of backwards compatibility. And but every once in a while, it might be good just to hit the reset button. And I think with a JavaScript interface talking to a PHP server, you actually get the benefits of a lot of WordPress ecosystem brought along with you. So, of course, things that sort of create an interface in WP admin, you need to evolve. If you look at a lot of plugins out there, sometimes they just create things that are front-end only, or create things that are shortcodes, or create things that actually won't be effective at all. If sort of the WP admin interface evolves to be something which is more pure JavaScript. So Calypso, like I said, is 100% open source now. And I think it'll be interesting to see that code start to be adapted, talking to different APIs, different ideas of what WordPress is. Some folks on the REST API team, actually within like a few days of Calypso being open source, already have like some of it working with the core REST API. So it's not that far away. I think it'll happen sooner than we think, actually. Cool. I'm also going to be leading a WordPress release later this year. As a huge coincidence, we announced I will be leading WordPress 4.7, which the release date is, I think, December 12th or December 13th. So keep an eye out for it.
Bruce. Hi, my name is Bruce. Nice to meet you. Welcome to Cape Town. Just a question. So obviously, we're all incredibly proud of WooCommerce as a South African product. Did that surprise you that a product like that would come out of South Africa? And has it led to you, even the tech industry in the States, look at other developing countries to see what might be coming out there? Was that an island?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. Although I will say that Woo is a very international company, just like Automattic is. So one of the things that I was very impressed at was how they had also been able to grow a truly distributed team that included people from dozens of countries, even when they joined, or at least a dozen. Because it's about 53 people, I think, who joined. 16 countries at the point when they joined Automattic, which now is about like 40 countries. So I've always believed that talent and intelligence is evenly distributed around the world. There's just different opportunities that different folks have. And as the internet creates, it doesn't solve a lot of the world's problems, but it does create access to information that is really unheard of in human history. The ability to communicate is unheard of in humankind's history. And so I think you'll start to see a lot more. Perhaps just individuals rising up first, but future more companies like Woo or lots of other companies coming out of Europe, different places that you would expect. Obviously, everything coming out of China. Like China was a country that 50 years ago, we would think of as a much less developed country. And now is obviously the largest economy in the world. Like this is enabled by all these things that we're building. And I feel like that's just going to accelerate. So
especially as it improves.
Y'all got to work on that.
So you should be impressed because we have no internet.
Yeah. I actually thought about that. So it was funny because I was getting a lot of reading done. So I would click something, wait for it to load, read my Kindle. It would load. I would go back, click on something else. It's actually pretty amazing. Maybe the Airbnb I'm staying in has that particularly slow internet, but it's like welcome to Africa. Like I was at Waterfront today. That's really good internet, actually. And that feels pretty good. And so, as the infrastructure improves, as people start to use it, there's no reason that that you can't create a world-changing company from I think anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Although Automattic is still lacking employees in Antarctica.
I did go to Antarctica, so for a little while, we had people on all 7 continents.
So if you know anyone in Antarctica, Automattic is hiring.
Cool.
I was just wondering, what do you think you would be working on right now if WordPress didn't turn out to be such a success and you left it behind after you started?
One more thing for the last question. I'll say that's the one place in the world with worst internet. Antarctica had the worst internet. So if I hadn't stayed with WordPress, you know, it's funny because I've always had a passion for publishing systems and CMSs. And in fact, like some of the early features in WordPress came from, I wrote a CMS called ContaktPress, you know, I had like lots of different things. And so I just kept writing these things. And honestly, I think I might keep writing them the rest of my life. Like I just really, you know, sometimes you get a hobby or just a passion, like an area that you're really into. Enabling people to publish is definitely my passion in that way. And, you know, there's so many aspects to it. You know, whether that's publishing a blog, or a website, or an e-commerce store, or there's so many different aspects. Who knows, maybe in the future that could expand to be that you're publishing like a VR world, or that you're publishing, you know, an app, or who knows. We still have a lot of work to do on the web, so I'm not, you know, going to walk around with the Oculus just yet. But, that, you know, fundamentally, when you can enable people to have a voice, like I feel like that is an intrinsically good thing all around the world. In spite of the fact that some people say bad things or dumb things or do evil with that, like overall, the goodness of humanity overwhelms that, and the world becomes a better place, including the bad things being exposed to the world. You know, not just festering in private, like that helps as well because it generates a conversation, generates a backlash, it generates a dialogue. So yeah, probably publishing systems forever. Who knows, maybe I went back to being a musician. But I probably wouldn't be here in Cape Town.
Anyone else? Jeff?
Still have some on your paper, right?
Yeah, I'll get back to this one.
I just wanted to touch on a lot of you have been talking about backwards compatibility and the long history that WordPress has had. And it's not unknown in this in the tech age for new things to pop up and just completely mow over existing technology. I was just wondering if you guys were scared of scared of new things popping up and you have a watchful eye looking at everything that pops up and B, where you think it's going to happen. And I know that WordPress has a lot of these adaptable dialogue personality, but just your insight into competitors and popping up.
It's interesting. It actually isn't as common as you would think that things go away. Like, think about it. Like, you still listen to radio. I know, because I've been in some movers, and we all have some weird radio here. So radio was what, 100 years ago? And it's been replaced by a million things better than it. Like Pandora and Spotify. But we're still listening to radio. And so often what happens is that a new technology grows in parallel. It matches the old technology. And often the new adaptations of our old medium are the first things that happen on a new medium often emulate the old ones. So the first sort of movie pictures were kind of done like plays. And the first television shows were done like movies and radio. You know, there'd be a dude sitting at a desk talking, telling a story. So like the medium often emulates the old one before it evolves into a completely new direction. I'm sure the first VR things we see will look a lot like movies, maybe like Avatar or something, before it evolves and we get a completely new direction. Gaming, again, is one of the most interesting areas there. I think some of the best storytelling happening just in the world right now happens in games. With WordPress, I think, and the cool thing about this technology is that if you think of what you're doing not as being tied to a particular medium, but as in fact solving a human problem, those human problems are actually constant. So if you thought of yourself in 1910 not as being like a radio company, but as maybe solving human boredom, right, or informing people, like that actually is just as relevant in 2016 as it was in 1960. Now, what happens is that organizations ossify or calcify and don't adapt, right? Or they go down rabbit holes, you know, they blow all the money making Snapchat stories. They should have just been investing in investigative journalism or something. But, you know, who knows what direction, but typically they're victims of their own success. The great thing about WordPress is because the community and the ecosystem is so much bigger than any one company, including Automattic, that it allows it to look more like a city than a company. And if you look at it, companies actually have a terrible, terminal rate, right? Most companies die, often within the first year, goes way up to 10 years, and once you get to 100 years, you're at the Fortune 500 100 years ago has 1 or 2 companies in common. If any. But cities are remarkably resilient. You can visit Hiroshima. There's things that cities can survive, and that's because they have a little bit of that aspect of chaos. And that's what's cool about open source, because you can make it not just like a product or like a company, but more like a city, where there's good guys, there's bad guys, there's crime, there's there's the WordPress police making the P's all capital. There's there's everything happening all at once, and it's a very dynamic system that's give and pull. And Automattic is just one participant in that, and just a very, the word ecosystem gets so overused by every dumb company with an API, but in open source's case, it can actually be true. And if you look at the resilience, including several open source compatriots like Drupal, they have ecosystems I think, honestly, barring the limits have been terrible the last decades. I think WordPress is the same way. And our history has shown that, in fact, we can even accelerate growth or become broader as from a web operating system. And I think that's really the potential. And what the web needs is an open source base and so many other things to be built on. Because the sort of centralized proprietary approach that is currently dominant in the largest companies in the world, be it Google or Facebook, I don't feel like it will last. Because fundamentally, the needs of those companies diverge from the needs of the users. And competition is just a click away. Thanks. Thank you. Good question.
I guess I'll ask one here that Mark sent in this week. It's about Calypso again. Calypso shows incredible promise for the strength of the WordPress API. Obviously, using WordPress.com API, getting the core REST API too. But what does this mean for the future of security for WordPress? I imagine that extra level of abstraction from the core PHP code is positive.
Well, I don't know. Because when you think about security, you're only as secure as your weakest link. And I think a key to WordPress going forward, even in Calypso, is going to be plugins. And, well, one, humans are fallible. Humans wrote all the code in WordPress. There will be bugs, some of which will have security implications. So are the hundreds of thousands of humans who wrote the 40,000 plus plugins for WordPress out there. And so when I think about security, it's not necessarily that it gets better or worse in a Calypso approach, but that perhaps the abstraction of an API will allow us to be more aggressive in how we do updates than an interface which is purely coupled with the backend like it is today. So we don't do auto updates for major versions yet, but someday we might be able to. And the point when we come out with 3 or 4 releases per year, I think is very archaic. I would love to release a new version of WordPress every single day. Just when you log in that morning, overnight your host is updated, and you get the latest and greatest, and the latest and greatest security patches and things like that. So really when you think about not just a set of finite code, any set of finite code in the world of any complexity is insecure. It's just a matter of time before you figure it out. So it really becomes about how do you protect the system, and that really is updates is the most important thing. And of course securing that update system becomes really important.
Yes, anyway.
What do you think about either of us about this, about WordPress as it is today? 2 parts. I just had to keep going with that.
Probably the worst thing about WordPress today is customization. So there's an incredible gap, especially in the preview theme space, between what you see in that demo and what you get when you activate the theme. And we lose a lot of people there because there's a lot of steps, a lot of shortcodes, a lot of custom post types, a lot of featured images, right? Trying to get you to that thing that looks beautiful. And I feel like this is one of the areas where some of the most opportunity in WordPress right now, because we just see it in all the data. That's where we lose people. It's because a lot of times it's not like starting a site and making a post on WordPress. You do it on WordPress.com. It's very easy. You do it in a couple minutes. But you don't want to tell people about that site of the blog until it looks the way that you want it to. And it turns out being that way you want it to is almost unimaginably hard problem, but one that I think that we could be far better than we are today. And the fact that the open source approach of WordPress could perhaps even solve better than anyone else has, be it WordSuite, Squarespace, and anyone else out there. The second thing is probably equal in magnitude to, if we solve it, the potential for it to vastly expand the reach of WordPress. And in fact, it is much further along than we're on the customization problem, and that's localization. So again, not a single person here uses WordPress without plugins. 40,000, 45,000 plugins and themes really make WordPress what it is. This incredibly rich, vibrant thing. But very, very few of those are in languages other than English. If you look at the top 100 plugins, there's not as, the top 100 plugins in WordPress are not available in the top dozen languages in the world, for example. And so we're excluding a huge majority of the world, actually, by being so English-centric. And what I hope is that the things we're doing here are, we've done a lot of work around localizing the plugins and theme structures, decoupling the plugin translations from the plugin author, so that there's a completely separate process where plugins can be translated. Language packs, you probably heard. Language packs allow those translations to be updated. And now starting to provide an experience on install. You pick your language. The entire recipe, including all the plugins you see, all the themes you see, the documentation, the support forms, all of that. There's actually a huge amount of stuff that needs to be in your local language. And I really look forward to the day that the primary job of our translators is translating back contributions from Spanish and Chinese and every other language in the world back into English so we can figure out how to do it. Right? Because right now it's all one direction. You start in English and then you get translated everywhere else. When we're really successful, there will be as much flowing in every direction. And one of the top 10 plugins for WordPress will not natively be in English. Might be in Japanese or Chinese or who knows what. And we'll be using the English translation of it. And I think that would be amazing. So if we can solve those two things, I think we can get to 50%.
But localization is a big thing as well, because we have like a dozen official languages in this country, and then 100 more dialects.
Which is kind of an amazing opportunity as well. A challenge to this meetup is how many of those dozen official languages even have a full core translation? And of those, can we get the top 10 plugins translated as well? It's all out there.
South African English has an official translation.
So it's in housing instead of howdy?
Pretty much. Same as English UK, just says housing.
Can I get one more of these Savannah? This is delicious. It's not alcoholic, right?
There's another question there. Someone grab a Savannah from that.
Thank you.
2 parts. The first part is, do you have any plans of getting rid of tendency? And the second part is, a few years ago you said you had a block pick in your bag. What's the most interesting use you've had of that so far?
How long is the statute of limitations here? Thank you very much. Cheers. Cheers. So I'll tell you a story. I can tell about how long it. I was staying, a lot of these, it was in one country. And I was with my friend Owen. We brought home a bottle of wine. This was in California. And we're staying in one of these, it's kind of like a hotel, but where it's also someone's apartment. So a bunch of the things are locked. But there's dishes and everything, but there was no wine opener. You're in wine country. But one of the drawers, I was like, it has to be a wine opener. So It was very easy to lock. Just kind of open it. There was a wine opener, open the wine, put it back, relock it. It's very useful. I just think, I have kind of a hacker mindset that I don't want to do anything that's going to harm anything, but if you can kind of poke in, see how something works, see what's behind the, closet door, see, it's just kind of interesting. It's more of a curiosity that drives it. Tiny MCE. It's funny because I feel like my relationship with Tiny MC has grown so much, especially over the past few years. And it was a relationship that started with, I was like, Tiny MC was amazing. We brought it in, WordPress 1.5. It was actually hugely controversial at the time. Not because of it being Tiny MC or not, but just because some people believe that WYSIWYG had no place in WordPress. You couldn't write code, you shouldn't be blogging essentially. And that was a big thing we had to overcome. But then over the years, I felt like Tiny MC was just this huge albatross, like something heavy, big and the lines of code, I think when we brought it in, were equal to the rest of WordPress itself. So a couple of years ago, we tried to rewrite it and create a from-scratch editor internal to Automattic. And it's some of the smartest JavaScript people I know working on it. And it's kind of actually an interesting mirror to the Calypso story, because it was, really smart folks working on it close to 2 years, and at the end of it, we ended up throwing it out. Now, we open sourced it, you can see it, but it essentially, what we found, and through this process, I gained a huge respect for Tiny MC. Because if you look at what it does, and the browsers it does it in, our editor started off much smaller, much faster. That's because it only worked in like Chrome and Safari. At the point, and only supported certain HTML tags. At the point when you start to support the breadth of the HTML that WordPress supports and Tiny supports, and have all the browser fixes, and have all the edge cases, and have all the cursor registry, there's some really, really important edge case stuff in any editing experience. That's why, editors are like a subset of CMSs. So that's something I could geek out on for the rest of my life, because I get an amazing editing environment. There's so much right. But even how you can tell it's super, super good editor, HTML editor? Quip actually has one of the best. Look at what it does in the boundary between a link and a non-link when you move your cursor around. How do you put text inside that link? How do you put text outside that link? Links text. Very, very tricky problem. So it turns out that it came out the other side, that this thing we built started to get just as big and complex as Tiny MCE, but without all the edge cases and years of development. And also, Tiny MC's been getting a lot cooler in the past few years. So I would say my love affair with Tiny MC is born anew. We have renewed our vows, and I expect we'll be together perhaps to the end of both of our days. Sure.
Hi. Just carrying on from that Tiny MC. What do you think of page builders in general? Page builder plugins, page builder themes, there's a few people that page builder plugins.
There's some people here who build page builders?
Yeah.
That's fine. What's it? Layers. Gotcha. Any other ones? What's it called? Site origin page. Wow, the page builder is sitting in front. Do you have one? No. Oh. So page builders are much smaller lines. Now be careful what I say, because I'm within throwing distance of them. I might have some fruit or something, and some of it rightly so. The interfaces can become very, very complex. The code they produce, they give you a lot of rope and you can hang yourself with it. It's a powerful tool that you can create really ugly things with. But I also believe that they fill a gap that WordPress does not, in terms of allowing people, again, to get from what they imagine to what they actually have. And however frustrating sometimes those interfaces might be. When people learn them, much like WordPress itself, when people learn it and get good at it, they can actually do some pretty awesome stuff and create things that perhaps in the past they would need a developer or to commission someone thousands of dollars. They can build for just either a free or the price of a page builder plugin or a page builder service. It's also something that I think would be interesting as a service, perhaps even on WordPress.org. So when you think about the complexity of a page builder, especially done right, is very, very hard, as I'm sure these gentlemen can attest. Like, it's a really, really hard problem to do. It'd be kind of interesting, though, to have something that perhaps bridged some of that as just available as a free tool, and the output necessarily wasn't, a bunch of short codes or database code, but output like a theme that you could download and use as sort of a base for customizing your digital WordPress. When I thought about how to solve the customization problem for WordPress, that might be an interesting approach. Sort of whether it's called an API or something like that, just because I know that the complexity of building a great page builder type tool could be, again, the size of tiny MCE. Like, it's such a big thing. And it's also something that you might only do around the beginning of your WordPress lifecycle. If you think about it, there's like, for many people, how they interact with WordPress is a ton at the beginning. And then it kind of goes to like a steady, like, maybe just blogging and posting things. And then it spikes again a couple of years later when you want to design it. At that point, that's when the page builder is so useful. And maybe having all that stuff in core when it's going to remain unused for the vast majority of the time that you're gathering. So I say that I have a respect for them and that they are bringing people or enabling people to express themselves in WordPress that wouldn't be able to otherwise. Do y'all want to add anything to that? Like, do y'all like page builders?
I like
to bottom.
We use the WordPress customizing. We rely on widgets to build pages.
I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. When you guys released the visual customizer, we thought that was a prime opportunity to, like you said, when you have a product in WooCommerce, it's in the post page. We felt that building websites in the post page with shortcuts wasn't the solution. So what actually happened was we wanted to build a page builder like that, but when my brother and I went away on like a little hackathon, we had an incident. So it's like, we can't look at anyone else's stuff, so it's not too much.
Thanks for sharing.
Benefits of that incident.
Now that you bought WooCommerce up, what are some of the biggest things that you expect to come out of it?
Come out of the WooCommerce acquisition?
Yeah.
That's a good question. That's kind of what we're talking about this weekend. Yeah, I think a lot of it's just what's happened before is better. I think that, like I said, Woo already looked like a company that was very much like Automattic. And I think sort of with our combined resources, one of the things that what's the stat, Matty, where like the developers went from like 4 to 16? Yeah, so like you just investing a ton of human resources and, Automattic are really good at building web services, web scale. So things like that, sort of combining our knowledge of our respective areas. I think it's actually a lot of complementary stuff. So if you imagine like, the most awesome thing that like Automattic and Woo could do, that's probably what it's going to We're also taking suggestions. If you have any suggestions, this is definitely the week to say that because it's kind of our first, it's our first sort of combined like planning things out, planning the future out together. It's really the first 6 months are like, it's like kind of like a first date. You're like asking each other where you're from, like how you work, and like kind of scoping them out, and maybe do a little dance together. But then now we're married, so we're figuring out how to build things the rest of our lives together.
Mark.
Automattic has a very big reputation for distributed team and how you guys run it. Was that a decision that you took from the start when you started Automattic, or was it something that kind of just organically became distributed? How did you, what were your thought processes before you decided to just start hiring?
Yeah, we were distributed basically from day one, and I couldn't imagine doing it any other way, because if you look at the first couple of books on Automattic, they were people who I was already working with on the open source side of WordPress. And those open source projects are distributed, right? Because we just need the internet. The biggest change has been how much the tools have evolved since then. You know, before we were on CVS, SourceForge, and IRC, and now we have Slack, and GitHub, and, WordPress.org, and all these amazing things that help us work together. And that's been really cool. P2 is another tool we use. So it became very, very obvious that I was like, well, these brilliant folks I already work with are in Ireland, in Texas, in Vermont, and I was in California. Why would I ask them to leave their families and their lives there and move to one of the most expensive places in the world? When all we're going to do is stare at our computers all day. It's not like we would run across the Golden Gate Bridge every day and think, deep thoughts while overlooking the Maroon Bay. No, we would just be in a room with no windows staring at a laptop. And you can do that from pretty much anywhere. Yeah, and that's been sort of, as it turns out, we're on the right side of that trend. Because what I said earlier about talent being distributed, there's so many amazing folks all around the world that the Googles and Facebooks of the world ignore, because they only want people who are either in one of their offices or willing to move from one of their offices. And the truth is that 99% of the population of the world is not in one of those places. And so by including that, I think that you can get an incredible creativity as well when it comes to folks who not just are maybe from a diverse place or from someplace, but actually live every day in some remote part of Indonesia or something like that. And that's really cool. And again, another great part is the flexibility it allows for people. One of the best parts about distributed work, I think, is that it provides an autonomy and flexibility to allow people to design their lives around their life and work really both vibing in harmony versus there having to be a balance between them. A lot of people at Automattic are mothers who have returned to the workforce. If they had to be in an office from 9 to 5, that wouldn't be compatible with them dropping their kids off and getting their kids and everything like that. Of course, we all know they're just as smart and productive and everything as every other person on the planet. They've chosen to they want to be at their kids, to pick up their kids when they get into school. Most traditional offices don't allow for that, or even if it was allowed, it might be some culturally frowned on. And so I believe that this is actually, it works on so many levels. So using this carbon by not commuting every day, if we can have a system where we can be productive from wherever we are and have good Wi-Fi, there's no reason. And I think that the world will be a happier and more productive place to be. So we're trying to pave the way. We're one of the largest distributed companies now. And I think we can take it to thousands of people. There's no plans to change it. And I would love to someday be back here at the WordPress meetup and be like, yes, Automattic is now a 5,000 person distributed company. You know what? It works great.
Yeah, just another question.
What other tools do you use daily or weekly? You just mentioned sort of GitHub stuff.
And what's your second part?
Wow! What are you doing there?
I'll be using GitHub and P2, which is a theme that Automattic created for collaborating with listeners for email. Personal tools I use. So when I have to do email, I do both Thunderbird and Mail. I really love Wunderlist for keeping track of to-dos. I already mentioned Coach.me for sort of these daily sort of habits I try to form. Calm is a great app, C-A-L-M. Calm.com, all these apps for meditation, for guided meditation type thing. Also has cool stats, so you can track how many minutes you've meditated or done. I like Runkeeper for running. What else is on here? What's that? Oh, coding. My editor is now Coda, which I really like. I don't code as much as I used to, though. And so, someone who does that constantly, like a lot of my colleagues use Atom now as their editor choice for Sublime text. I feel like two of the more popular choices. What else? I love my writing, and I do enjoy so. So, especially longer things I write, even if I'm drafting. And some other automatic products I use every day. Simple which is a simple notes app. You should check it out if you haven't. It's like ridiculously fast and simple. And often my first draft of almost everything I do is simple. CloudUp, which is another acquisition we did, which is kind of like you take a screenshot, you get a URL for it instantly. And you can share that, you can upload galleries, videos, everything. CloudUp's really also crucial how we work and collaborate across online and outside of online. And Slack. Slack is now where the vast majority of my sort of work collaboration comes from. In terms of other messaging apps, Facebook Messenger, Telegram, just pretty much everything. Send me a P2 message. Cool. Just want to check.
I'm not a coder, but I'm an attorney who's interested in technology, always has been. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jeff for about 15 years, and he introduced me to WordPress a long time ago. And I've kind of watched it develop against its other competitors. And what I found very interesting when I heard about Automattic being the owner of WordPress, well, it raised a couple of questions for me. The one was, how do you, multiple questions, but how do you sort of reconcile your commitment to open source with your your tendency to seek out products and their commercial products?
Yeah. Well, the first clarification is that Automattic doesn't own WordPress. But don't feel bad because it's actually very confusing. So there was almost like three separate things. There was a WordPress. That's like the core software that you can run on anywhere. You're running on WordPress.com. You can also run on Amazon, Google Stream. So that's core software that's developed by volunteers all over the world. Automattic is a contributor to that, but it doesn't own it anymore. No one owns it actually. It's open source. You own it just as much as I do. There's WordPress.org, which is our community hub, and where we develop the WordPress software and have a plugin directory, the theme directory, everything like that. That's also sort of an open community side thing. And over on this side, we have WordPress.com, which is owned by Automattic. So Automattic has a license to the WordPress trademark, which is owned by the WordPress Foundation. So run WordPress.com, and has now for over 10 years. So if I could start all over, I might call them different things because it's a little bit difficult, and people basically ignore everything after the dot. But yeah, there's multiple things with WordPress, and we only, how Automattic makes money is from three main areas. WordPress.com, where people can use it for free, but then subscribe for $100 or $300 a year. Jetpack. I can talk about Jetpack because Bo just went to the restroom. It's basically, think of WordPress, Kismet, all that sort of stuff in the Jetpack plugin, obviously. These add-on services for when you're running yourself. And Woo. So the WooCommerce extension and that whole ecosystem around Woo. Those are our three main areas of focus.
And then, secondly, your commitment to this very kind of relaxed way of working, this ethos where people can work their time, their place, and so on. It's just counterintuitive as far as typical business is concerned. And I'm curious to know how, so whether you started to feel the pressure as far as the simple things like overheads and you're the CEO, but it's the report that you're reporting asks you about turnover, objectives and goals and targets and so on. And do you ever consider just backing out of that program and going
the way everyone else does?
Yeah, so everyone else does things in a very rigid method. there's overheads, and there's fixed offices, and so on. I'm just wondering if there's a point at which you sort of question.
The point when I wish we had more of an office is actually after weeks like this with meetups, because I really love seeing competitions. And after spending a week with them, I'm like, man, I wish I could do that every week. So that's the time when I think about going to offices. Although Automattic is a very flexible work environment, I would not use the adjective relaxed to describe it. It's actually incredibly intense, and many people who join, including from traditional office environments, especially in the beginning, struggle to keep up. This is why we have such an intense hiring process that can last months sometimes at a time, because it's not an arena that everyone will be comfortable in. There's a lot of trust in the time, but also incredibly high expectations, because we're trying to tackle a big mission, which is to democratize web publishing. We want to be the operating system of the web, and our competitors are manyfold and very strong and well-funded. If you look at like a Wix, a Squarespace, a Weebly, a GoDaddy, all of these, they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars per year advertising against WordPress. And so we have to beat that with the quality of our products, because we're not spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year advertising. So that is, you asked, do we think about business metrics and everything like that? It's not necessarily we do have a board. It's not the board driving that, it's me. Because ultimately, for Automattic, Automattic is a business, which also contributes a ton of open source and everything like that. It's still a business. And the fundamental measure of whether we're doing a good job of creating value in the world, like why we should exist, is if we create something that's worth people buying. That's sort of the fundamental nature of value. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we create things that no one buys. And it's like, oh, well, that wasn't the right product. It wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the right messaging. Who knows what it was? We'll try to figure it out. So someone does, but that sort of process makes sense. And I think you can use data to drive that very intensely. And in fact, modern companies like Automattic can use open source projects like Hadoop and Lucene and other sort of, they call it big data. It's essentially like track actually, they're very fine-tuned view. Like the cohort of people that signed up on December 23rd, 2015, what are they doing on January 4th? How many posts did they make? How many times did they log in? How many times did they change their feed? And using this data can actually give us incredible information to iterate and evolve the WordPress product. That's how I know that customization is such a big problem, because we see such huge drop-offs in every single action associated with that area. So this data can then inform the product, allows us to really do what we love, which is trying our darndest to create something that people enjoy using, that both they have fun with and enables them to do something that they could do before. With, you asked about the WordPress foundation and all that, one of the things I really tried to do with creating these different aspects was, I believe that nonprofits can do amazing things, I believe for-profits can do amazing things. But the sort of experiment of Automattic and WordPress is if you can get these two things sort of operating in concert, where independently pursuing their self-interest, they actually benefit the other side of it. The Automattic just trying to do its best for Automattic actually benefits WordPress a ton because of the way things are structured, both from a code level, a trademark level, an organizational level, a people level. Could it create something that is so much bigger and better? And the answer so far has been yes. And I think that I would love to see more and more sort of industries and areas take this approach as well. Because I do believe that that sort of conscious capitalism, the sort of company paired with a bigger mission and with open source or a foundation or something like that, which balances out perhaps the sort of base needs of the shareholders, is perhaps even the future of what companies could exist in the 21st or 22nd century of how we want them to interact. Because I think companies are going to become more and more powerful and governments actually less, to be honest. And so in 2100, I think the thing that will impact people's freedoms the most is going to be not necessarily which border they happen to live in, but maybe which device is the primary computing device. And the choices of that manufacturer or software creator everything made for how they interact, because that will be a portal to other people, be a portal to information, be a portal to computing and computing will be so much more advanced at that point. So it's going to be very, 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 very cool. And the really agrees with me.
Cool, we're time for a few more stalls.
Hi, Matt. Cool. I like WordPress when it comes to blogging. Now that you're moving into WooCommerce, I want you to help me answer a question. We get clients who come to me saying they want to launch an online store, they don't know which solution to use, they want to sell a few hundred products, and they want to mention them, but it's really good competitors. How can you mention that? It's okay. I PrestaShop actually use it a little bit, and what I actually end up doing is doing the PrestaShop products and then a WordPress blog for SEO purposes. What arguments can you get for WooCommerce against Magento, PrestaShop, Shopify, which is usually what people are looking into?
You want to answer this? Maddie, you want to? They're a little shy here.
How can I convince my clients to go with WooCommerce?
You know, the only thing I would ask is actually for you to continue trying. Because maybe today, PrestaShop is a better solution for what you're trying to do. And our responsibility, like our challenge, is to make, whether it's WooCommerce or whatever else you're working on, so good that you can't ignore it, right? Where just based on you as an independent person, not because I'm saying you should or anything like that. Pretend you never come to a WordPress meetup, never met me. You just kind of try all the solutions out there out. The one that you pick. That's what we need to strive for. So if we haven't done it yet, I would say check back in a year. It'll give us some time to keep working on it. I think that there are, and there will always be lots of solutions for almost every problem you can imagine. I just do believe that, and that back and forth of different things having different strengths actually is what makes all of this better. So don't feel bad if you use PrestaShop now. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I hope that we can make Woo even better in the future. So try it out. Know what you don't.
We have actually had people come in and do like lives. Like I'm not going to say, hey, I use WooCommerce, I'm trying to do this, can you help me?
Cool.
So don't use
Like on that.
It's nicer
It's like live chat.
I have a question. For this coming year, 2016, what do you, in terms of the WordPress community in general, so the WordPress project, core community, anything, what are you most excited about in WordPress for this year?
Well, obviously version 4.7. But I can't see anything else.
Anyone else? Yeah.
When you go to Responsify, P2, Responsify.
Make P2 responsive. Is that the question?
Yes.
Where's Bo? So it's funny, we rewrote P2 from the ground up in this thing called O2. I think you can use it on WordPress.com, right? And is it open source? You can download it on GitHub as well. So there's a thing called O2 which is responsive, which works better, but uses WordPress.com API. What's the so download O2 from GitHub.
This is its own built-in API. It's a bundle with it.
So why don't we link to it on P2?
It's not fully officially supported, so you have to go download O2 off GitHub, and then you have to go get the theme for it separately.
Oh, because it's a plugin and themes thing, right? Breathe. Yeah.
That's so much more flexible.
Yeah, so you download a nice download plugin and a theme. So if you're extra cool, like someone who comes to a Cape Town WordPress meetup, you now know that there's a better version of P2, which is called O2, that is fully responsive, that's a bit faster, that has cooler design, supports a few new features. And so check that out on GitHub, just automatic/O2.
You can get to github.com, /automatic/O2.
Cool, sounds good. Check it out. Cool.
So after the question.
Wait, Mike, so record.
I was the other day. I'm a bit biased. I've been using WordPress since 2006. So the backend to me is pretty intuitive, and I know where everything is. But again, I'm biased. So somebody said to me, WordPress, I totally hate it. The backend, it's just terrible. It's unusable. And I don't know how to respond to things like that. It's a bit like speaking to PHP developers, just straight up PHP developers, and they say to me, working with WordPress, it's the shittest software ever. But yeah, that's another topic. But
Your friends are very rude.
so with the I realized that Drew Jane, for example, James he's doing work on onboarding. And there's a lot of work going on around that. What is your view for the future with onboarding and the backend?
So while I may not agree with the vocabulary of your associates, there's some truth to what they say. I mean, even using WordPress since 2006, we've had 3 major redesigns in that time. You think of the navigation used to be at the top, and we moved it, and we kind of bounced things around. The crazy worst redesign, MP6, just a few years ago. So WordPress has evolved a lot in that time. And the truth is that if you know how to use it, it's fantastic. A good analogy for the WordPress interface is like an SLR camera, right? It's got, you look at that thing for the first time, it's got all the buttons, and you're like, what on earth? It's not a point and shoot necessarily. I mean, there is, if you just press the right button, it will take a picture. But there's a lot going on there that, if you know how to use it, it can be one of the most powerful tools in the world. And that's probably why we're all here. I think that actually, because this is something I try to reverse engineer a lot of my mind. Because I'll watch like a user test for WordPress, and I'll be like, how on earth does anyone use this? It's so impossible. But I think part of it is just that often folks like you here in this room, like maybe your first time using WordPress, someone showed you and walked you through it a little bit and said, hey, here's what, because once you know what to do, it's intuitive, which actually isn't what intuitive is. But let's say it's fast, or it can be, it can allow you to do things once you know how to do it. But if you come to it with a completely blank slate, like, man, there's just so much, like there's posts and pages, there's the what's on your homepage setting, there's menus, like, am I a restaurant? Oh, you need navigation. But wait, there's another menu down here in the footer, like how do I change the copyright text? Like, okay, how about the fonts? Oh, I can't just change it like my WordPress? Like, there's so much that's so different that there's a lot of mental models embedded in it. That again, I think once you get trained on that, the whole thing makes sense. But if you have a different mental model, like maybe this is your PHP friend, of how things should be written, whether it's an MVC approach or anything else, or you haven't internalized those mental models yet, it can be quite challenging. And I think that's really, again, the hardest thing to do as a software developer is deciding which mental models to use. And then, like you mentioned, the onboarding stuff. So some very cool work going on in 4.5. From Mike, Drew, Helen, like tons of folks who do this really interesting work going all the way back to the user. And this is, because this is the work we get asked for the most. Is that person that started to use WordPress and then gave up is not in our Slack meetings. They're not like making requests on the forums. They're not tweeting us. They just gave up. And they got further along at least than the person who downloaded the zip file and then had a bunch of .phps on their desktop, right? And had no idea where to go from there. And think about it, there's a lot of assumptions embedded even in what we push you to do on WordPress, which is download a zip file that you cannot execute. You need to know to upload that to a server, and it's PHP, and there's so much going on there. So we break that down. I'm very excited by the work, and it's something that will probably last 4 or 5 releases at the very beginning of the release. Either myself or encourage someone to work with someone to just do a from scratch user test. Like watch a video of someone who's never used WordPress before, just going from nothing to trying to make their first post. It is so eye-opening. I'm sure many of you have seen this actually the first time you show a client how to use WordPress, the first time you teach your friends. Luckily, you're there. You're the best interface in the world, right? Because you can adapt to what they're doing. You see what they're doing, and you can say, no, click there. That messes everything up. Go over here. And you can say all this, and that's about posting pages. If they don't understand it, you can explain it again. But that is actually the best interface in the world. That's why support is so important for, I think, every company, especially in the WordPress world. Until then, we have a lot of work to do. That's why I'm not worried about working on WordPress the rest of my life, because it's so terrible. That there's so much to improve. I really do feel I could work several more decades on it and still have maybe just as much left to do as there has been done already. And that's kind of the beautiful thing as well, because I do believe that people using this open source publishing software, that people having a way, having a voice on the web that is open both its input, its output, uses web standards, it has exports, it has APIs. The web is a better place if we can get the majority of the web on it. So it's worthwhile doing. It's hard work, but I want to continue. Thank you. I think we're out of time.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Yeah. Oh, hey, thank you all so much. Like, this has been awesome. So, plug it. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Photo, and check out my WordPress at ma.tt.
Maddie was really upset that you had that tonight.
You can have the .ty.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here, and I know you had a really busy week, but making time for our community today it's great. We're privileged to have you here. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back in Cape Town soon. We have a WordCamp later this year.
Let me know when you get the broadband about 10 minutes. All right, thank you all. Good night.
Cool, thanks guys.